This is Lynn Fraser with the Kilby Center, and I'm really happy to be here today with Joan Tollifson. So we're replaying her interview from last year, but I wanted to catch up with you, Joan, and just talk a little bit about your book. You know, when we talked last time, you just were in the midst of some diagnoses of cancer and treatment coming up, and there was a bunch of stuff going on for you. And then sometime between then and now, you've managed to publish this book, finish the book, and publish it. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about the book and what people might find in there? I love the title. It's such a, it just kind of draws you in. It's like, oh my God, there is going to be a time when I'm not going to be able to fix things. What then?
Yeah, people love the title. Yeah, because I think our culture is so obsessed with self improvement that it's a huge relief. Uh, People just kind of laugh. um, and of course, I'm not in any way disparaging genuine transformation like addiction recovery and so on. That's not
Yeah,
the point.
yeah.
Um, and I do talk in the book about I differentiate between what I call genuine transformation and the kind of self improvement that our culture is so obsessed with,
Mhm.
based on deficiency stories and constantly pursuing future perfection. Um, but the book, basically, I started writing it in 2003 when I was in Chicago. I had moved to Chicago to be with my mother in her final years, and and I was going through menopause at the time. So, um, and then I've been writing it ever since 2003. It was published this last November. So it basically covers that 16-year period, in which I went from being in my 50s to being and along the way went through the death of my mother and my main teacher Tony Packer and several other my first lover,
Mhm.
and a number of other people. And so I would found myself just kind of writing about aging and dying,
Mhm.
uh, and realized that I was also really writing about living and
Right.
um, and of course also what's going on right now in the world. I mean, we are in um, facing what many people feel is irreversible, devastating climate change that will wipe us out. Some people think there is some hope of recovery, but certainly we're facing a very catastrophic situation.
We are.
And so it's not only a personal dying or the dying of friends, but something that's going on. We're watching Australia burn as we speak. The Amazon uh, rainforest has been burning, etc. Um, so it's what I'm trying to do in the book is write about aging in a way that doesn't uh, that really reveals the nitty gritty difficult side of aging that is often sort of out of the picture in the things that we hear, um, and but to do that in a way that sees the beauty in that messiness and that difficulty. And and then of course during the time I was writing this book, I also got cancer, as you mentioned earlier, and I have recovered. But I live now with an ostomy. It was an anal cancer, and an ostomy is a bag of poop on my belly. And I mean, I had cancer in all the places you're not supposed to talk about out loud. So it was. It explores all of those things, hopefully in a way that's both realistic and yet um, seeing the beauty in them, and from my spiritual perspective, which basically is one that sees the sacred in everything, and
Mhm.
even in poop, which I've seen a lot of in the last few years. And um, yeah, so that's, and the book is a mix of personal stories about all this and spiritual reflections. So
Yeah.
it's both together, woven together. So that's kind of the book in a nutshell.
Mhm. Well, one of the things that I really like, as I was just beginning the book, even the first couple of chapters was, and it's very much in line with your own writings, is that it's not this spiritual bypassing. Everything is, a dance in a meadow with the sunshine or something. There's real life here, and and that's not everything. So not to deny one or the other, but to really kind of explore what that really means for a person. And as you're going into this phase of your life where your body is getting older, and you talk about the dissolution and the things that are falling apart, and I'm in my mid 60s, and I'm noticing that as well. Things don't work the way they did before, and my body's drier and my joints hurt more. And I'm in this beautiful place that requires me to have a healthy body in order to
Hmm.
stay here. And so I've just been noticing the last few years there's a lot more thoughts about, well, maybe I don't really have time to put off getting healthy the way I always kind of thought, well, I'll do that later. So it's interesting to be in this position of there's this reality of the body.
Yeah, and even no matter how much we do to be healthy,
Yeah.
um, so many of the great spiritual teachers died of cancer. Ramana, Nisargadatta, Suzuki Roshi, Katagiri, the list goes on. Noreen Stewart, the list goes on and on.
Hmm.
And people, like my teacher Tony Packer, who she didn't have cancer, but she spent the last 10 years of her life with a very severe, she was chronic illness that was involved excruciating pain and mobility disappearance until she was bedridden the last few years.
Wow.
And she was someone who had, eaten great food and,
Right.
exercised, taken long walks every day, et cetera, et cetera. So um, there's really, I mean, eventually we all die. I mean, and no matter how much we care for our aging bodies, like in my case, I wouldn't be able to live in the way you're living anymore. It's just no longer an option.
Right.
Um, because of the ostomy and various things. And there may be people living in those situations with ostomies, but I'm in a somewhat different situation because I'm managing it with one hand. And
Right.
everybody who has one is in a somewhat different situation, depending on a lot of various factors that I won't go into. But
Right.
but anyway, so I'm really I can't travel anymore. Really, I'm
Mhm.
much more um, limited in terms of the kinds of things I can do, which is okay with me because of, I mean, I think I might have found that really difficult if I was 25 or 30.
Right. Right.
But at this stage of life, I'm kind of, it's almost a blessing to be sort of tethered to where I am.
So can you talk a little bit about that process for you of kind of settling in and accepting? In your book, you talk about that a bit too, of just what is it that's happening right now, and this is it. This is what's going on, and how you've worked with that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, we really have no choice. I
Yeah.
mean, we can resist, but it doesn't really do anything except make it worse as we begin to discover. So, um, for me, my spiritual path, and everyone's is different, but really is about um, being this moment, being with whatever's here. And by being with it, I mean I don't mean thinking about it, but really just completely experiencing it. And not that I consciously sit around complete, like when I was going through the cancer treatment, it
Mhm.
was excruciatingly painful some of the time. I mean, my genitals and anus were being literally burned and quite painful. And,
Mhm.
I didn't spend every moment, consciously feeling into that. I watched movies and TV and, did things also to, distract myself from the pain, which I think is perfectly legitimate.
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
so but basically, so I just want to clarify because sometimes people get the idea that you're not supposed to do anything like that. You just have to be with the pain constantly.
Right.
um,
There's
and
some
that's
kind
not.
of a spiritual gold star if we can be present with it all the time.
Yeah, we're back to the self-improvement model,
Yeah.
where spirituality is this goal. I'm trying to be completely free of all thoughts, free of all troubling emotions, you know
Mhm.
never distracted, never disturbed, just kind of in this state of perpetual bliss. And then, of course, we fail, and
Right.
we feel like we're not very good at this. We're a failure. So to me, it's just being with all of that, and I think kind of over time that goal of perfection falls away, at least if you're lucky, and
Right.
and you're more willing to just be with the actuality of how it is. And and that includes the transcendent perspective of the, the space in which it's all happening, or the vast wholeness of everything. Um, but not the kind of transcendence that denies the body, or uh, the everyday, or the the reality of, to me, it's about really feeling the energy in the body, feeling the sensations, being this moment, hearing the airplane, smelling the rose, you know,
Mhm.
tasting the coffee. It's not about leaving all that behind. But yes, seeing it in a bigger perspective at the same time, which is the transcendent, seeing it in this bigger context. Um, and when you go right to the heart of it, actually, when you go right to the heart of any sensation, what do you find? I mean, you find space, openness, nothing.
Mhm. Mhm.
So you kind of get to the same place whether you zoom out or zoom in.
Right. So for someone who's experiencing some kind of dissolution in the body, maybe a health crisis or aging or pain of some kind, you talk about that a lot in the book of kind of your process of working with that. Is there kind of a quick answer or a pointer?
A nice quick fix. Just do this and
Well,
you'll be fine.
it is kind of against the whole point of the book, I know.
Yeah, I mean, of course there are many things that we can do, and I mean, I tried all of them. I mean, I had
Yeah.
everything from CBD oil and salves of various kind, and pain pills, and all that,
Mhm.
to meditation and feeling into it deeply, and you know all of that, to to turning on the TV and watching a good movie on Netflix.
Right, right.
Whatever works, and sometimes nothing works and you're
Mhm,
just feeling horrible. And then
mhm,
uh, you can notice that you're feeling horrible, and you're just feeling horrible. You kind of begin to notice that desire to get away from it, that kind of frantic desire to get away from it.
mhm,
And this is what I discovered in Zen years ago, when you had to sit through hours of pain.
mhm,
That as long as you're mentally resisting it, thinking about, this is going to kill me, when's it going to end, you know, that makes it worse. It tightens everything up. It makes it worse. And when you can completely relax and just allow it to be the way it is, kind of allow yourself to die in it,
mhm.
um, then sometimes it just disappears completely. But at the very least, it becomes bearable and sometimes even interesting. Um, but if you sort of are doing that as a practice, kind of with the idea that this is going to work,
Right.
talking about,
The goal.
because
Yeah.
there again, about that little, yeah, that
Mhm.
little, I don't like this, I want to get to that, which is natural too. I mean, if you're in pain, naturally you want to feel better. I mean, it's kind of
Yeah,
natural, but,
of
but,
course.
um, yeah, so, yeah, I don't think there is a magic bullet for getting older or for being in pain. There's a lot of techniques and practices and wisdom and things that help,
Mhm,
but I
mhm.
don't think there's a magic bullet. I think, in a way, we just go through it, um, and we find our way. And amazingly enough, a lot of these things that seem so horrible and are so horrible in some way, um, are also uh, blessings in some way. I mean, I feel like my cancer was a blessing, and I'm not trying to sugarcoat it. I honestly mean that.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that's, I've seen that before in my life, with having one hand and going through addiction and all kinds of things. That these things, that the suffering in our life is often what allows us to transform and see new things and wake up.
So
And
true. Mhm.
yeah, so we think, if we were choosing our life, we'd leave all that out.
Yeah, that's true.
and yet, as I say in the book, I can't quote myself exactly, but something to the effect that I feel like a life of nothing but sunny days and happy moments would not be nearly as rich as the life we actually have, where there's actually a lot of pain and suffering and brutality and cruelty and everything else.
Right. And then somehow we kind of get practical in a way and just really notice what's beautiful too, that it's not.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I found that with the cancer, for example, um, I was already someone who really appreciated every moment, but in many ways, but it just intensified. I just am even more grateful for the simple things in life, the taste of a cup of tea, the little drops of dew on a leaf, the sounds of rain, etc.
Mhm.
And so I think in a way you wake up more and more to the beauty of what's here instead of these ideas that we have about what would be better and what I'd rather have and what hopefully I might someday attain and and all of that. We just sort of wake up to, and that's one of the great things about getting old, because your youthful fantasies of how you're going to turn a wonderful, perfect person don't really hold up very well when you're in your 70s. It's sort of like, maybe not. I'm still biting my fingers. It's like it hasn't gone away. Maybe it will, but and so I'm at peace now with the fact that maybe it won't. Maybe it
Uh,
won't.
mhm.
And that's actually a big relief. Um, you know, and I hope it goes away, but I still hope it goes away. I'd love it to go away. It's a compulsion, but it's an impulse control disorder, a compulsion.
Yeah.
But so far it hasn't. It's
Mhm.
gotten better, but it hasn't gone away. And that's, I think, part of what happens with aging is you just kind of accept yourself the way you are and life the way it is. You realize that when you're young, you think you want to fix the world. You're gonna have
Mhm.
world peace
Right.
and
Yeah.
and all this stuff, and then you realize as you get older, no, it's not going to go that way. And some progressive change, but it'll go the other way then for a while. you
Mhm.
know
Mhm.
and eventually, whether it's through climate change or whatever, the sun will explode, it will all end. That death is part of life, and so it's like, um, you just eventually sort of get to a point, if you're lucky, where you accept yourself the way you are and the world the way it is. And not in every moment. There are still moments where I want somebody to be different from how they are.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But I've noticed that that's suffering, that it doesn't actually work.
Yeah. 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 I think that's a beautiful kind of mature place to be. One thing I'd probably love it if I had my 15-year-old body, but certainly not my 15-year-old mind or my outlook on the world or, and so many people are so driven that, and so full of shame and self-loathing, and their inner critic is just always active, wanting them to be different. And to come to this place of going, well, that's actually not how life works, and maybe it's okay just to be the way I am.
Yeah,
It's a
it's beautiful. It's a huge relief. It's a huge relief, and
yeah.
making peace with how it is. It doesn't mean you're still. I still plan to vote for somebody else in the next election, and
Right.
and I'm not particularly moved to go do political activism anymore, but I could be. It's not. It doesn't mean you don't necessarily do things
Mhm.
that you know, but you might still go to a addiction recovery program or whatever. It doesn't
Right.
mean that you're not going to do certain things, but or like doing whatever you can to keep your body healthy enough that you can continue to live in this place that you love.
Right. Mhm.
Fine, that's fine. It's the sort of, the suffering is in the idea that you have to keep your body this way, which is
Or that
going
it or that it's a trade. Like if I do these things, then I'll get to live here, because it doesn't work
right.
that way either.
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
like, yeah, and that if I can't live here, I'll be miserable. I have to
Right.
make it work,
Yeah.
and then you just do what you do. I certainly do what I do to deal with the cancer, and
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Well, I think that's a little glimpse into the book. I'm about halfway through, but I'm really looking forward to getting all the way through. I'm kind of absorbing it. And one of the things I really like about what you're writing is that you really are reflecting on what's happened as well, and bringing in the non-dual perspective and your own spiritual um, maturity, as well as the difficulties that you're working with. So it's a very practical, down to earth book. There's a lot of spiritual writing that's kind of out there in the clouds, and this isn't a book like that at all. It's very,
Yeah.
very grounded.
Yeah. Yeah. I've never been very out in the clouds. I mean, I have my transcendent moments,
Yeah.
or it's not like, but to me, spirituality is not about always being in some. There are moments of meditation where there's just beautiful, spacious emptiness or something.
Yes. Hmm.
And if I tune in, it's right here, right now. Even in the
Right.
midst of this conversation, it's always here.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm not like in this place of sort of deeply feeling into that 24/7. Nobody is. Well,
Right.
maybe if they're sitting in a cave or something,
Right. Right.
but even then, they're probably not 24/7.
Yeah.
Um, I try to show in the book that I feel like it's all included. Like there's these kind of different, I don't know if you want to call them layers or dimensions or whatever, with perspectives on reality. That reality can see itself in many different ways.
Mm,
And it can be seen as pure consciousness or felt as pure consciousness. It can be seen as political drama and felt as political drama. It can be seen as you know sensations and energy and felt that way, and none of them are they're all valid, they're all part of this whole happening. They're just ways of in which it sees itself or experiences itself. That's how I see it.
mhm.
And so it's not about making one right or the or wrong. It's like they're all. So to me, spirituality is not the opposite of secular life or everyday politics or anything like that. It's all there. It's all included. To me, that's non-duality.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And literally, it's not dual. It's not separate.
Yes, exactly. Nothing is separate. It's all one whole
Yeah.
undivided whole.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. That's lovely. I'll encourage people to watch your interview and to pick up your book. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming back on.
Well, thank you for having me, and as always, I'm deeply grateful for you and Scott and the Killaby Center and all the wonderful work that you're all doing. It's a blessing to the world. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Hello, this is Lynn Fraser with the Killaby Center Radical Recovery Summit. We are so excited to bring you the lineup for January 10th to 19th, 2020. Go to radicalrecoverysummit.com to see the new headliners for 2020 and to sign up. You can watch free January 10th to 19th or buy an all access pass.